So nobody has turned on their video. Okay, so let's begin. I'm sharing my screen with you. Last lesson, we talked about the pricing methods that businesses used. Yeah, so the pricing methods that businesses use in order to sell their products. So how do you know what price is suitable for your product? High, low, according to your competitors, according to the market, or according to the cost that went into producing the product, making the product. We talked about those in the last lesson. This lesson, I'm going to quickly go through them again, since you have a table in your book on page 174 that lists the features, the uses, the benefits, and the limitations of each pricing method. This table is really, really useful for review. It summarizes all the points that we talked about in a neat way. So there might be quite few new information that we haven't mentioned exclusively in the last lesson. So that's why I'm going to do this now. So for example, when we talked about market skimming and the initial price being high, there is an advantage to that, obviously. And the advantage is that the amount of profits that you're going to make would be high, which should be enough for you to recover the investment cost. The investment cost meaning how much money went into producing the product. As you might know, some businesses, they can't. They produce a product, but they cannot make enough profit to recover the cost that went into making the product. Market skimming might provide that opportunity. Okay, so why did we lower the price gradually? Well, it was because the competition became higher. You attracted competitors to yourself as a result of the high profits that you made. So that grabs attention, that grabs people's attention, and they want to mimic and copy your idea so that they make profit as well. Well, what that does is that gradually, if there is no patent or copyright on your idea, that is, okay? So that does is that competition becomes high, so you are forced to lower your prices. There is an advantage to that though, which is you are able to sell to more people and add more people, loyal customers to your customer base. Okay. We also talked about the initial high price working as a way for you to create quality image. Because as you know, usually people's perception about quality comes from its price. If it's really expensive, then it might indicate that its quality is good. So those are the advantages that is mentioned in that table. Some of them are self-evident. You don't have to, memorize them. We roughly talked about them all. But that's the purpose of that table. And when we go to penetration pricing, well, the initial price is low. That creates loyalty because that's how you add customers to your to your business. So that's an advantage. It's good for a new product that wants to enter a very competitive market. It also helps you create a market share. I don't know if you remember what market share was, but it was how what percentage of the market belongs to your business. So in car manufacturing, what is the percentage of the market taken up by Ford? Well, if your price is low, but Berzi and Bares, can I ask you to mute your audio, please?
Sir, I didn't realize it was on.
Thank you. Uh, so yeah, so when you have a bigger market share, that's more popularity, that's more fame, let's say, and that creates more customers, so you gain a bigger market share. So it was a great way for you to achieve that. And when we go to competitive pricing, well, you know, prices are similar to the competitors. It's useful for businesses that operate in a competitive market. If you're a latecomer to a market, you're able to find your place in the market by having a price that is similar to your competitor. And you might be able to focus, last point, on quality, on being creative and innovative. So sometimes we go into a market and no one is special, and price doesn't become a concern after a while. You know, it's just the same price that your competitors have. When that is the case, then you are forced to think of other ways to become creative and unique and being known. And that's good for the whole economy, you know, businesses competing in other area besides price. And lastly, promotional pricing. It's a really good method to sell unwanted inventory. Inventory means a warehouse, a stock of your products that you have. You might know that keeping a warehouse is very costly and expensive for businesses because you have to have people who can run it, you have to maintain it. Sometimes the products that you keep in the inventory become damaged due to earthquakes and fire, let's say, for example. So, you know, there's a risk to keeping an inventory, and people might lose interest in the product after a while. You know, taste and fashion changes, technology, innovation changes. So you might want to get rid of your stock quickly so that it doesn't become a waste entirely. And a really good for you to do that is by using promotional pricing. This is when you put discounts on your items and products so that more people are able to buy them. Some businesses, they set prices lower than the competitors for a while. That's to increase customer loyalty and repeat purchase. So again, that table just summarizes all the points that we've talked about so far. So you can use it to as a good way to review what we have taken so far. Cost plus, this was when we added a percentage to our cost and we made it our selling price. We said it's mostly used by retailers. That's a feature of it. And there's a risk to it though, which is, you know, I could set a price because I only consider my cost, but it turns out that it's higher than my competitors. Now, the conclusion that I can make from this, which is our topic today, is how do you choose a good pricing method? What criteria do you look at in order to say, well, cost plus is, I'm going to go with cost plus, or I'm going to go with the other methods of pricing? Well, these are the factors that you look at. And let me tell you this, and please mark it um, uh, for reference as very important for the exam. Because in the exam, you would be given case studies and you would be asked to suggest a suitable pricing method for that case study. Well, you have to read it, obviously, to see what the product is. Is it a new product or a product that already exists in the market? For example, this Eco Studio that Google is producing, it's a new product. So you might say, well, since it's new, I might go with price skimming because I want to create a good brand image for it, quality image for it. I want it to have a good reputation. So yeah, second point, second criteria you look at is if the product is unique, like this backpack that we have here. Since it's a new unique product, you might go with price skimming and not necessarily look at, you know, the market competition level. or go with penetration pricing since you wanted to be cool by having a high price. So not everybody is able to buy it. So that's how you create a good quality image for it. Going back to the new product, well, it might be a new product that is not unique. In that case, competition might be high. So penetration pricing might be suitable, or competitive pricing might be suitable as well, if in case there are similar products like the one we have here. And third criteria might be level of competition. Obviously, if it's high competition, then competitive pricing or penetration pricing might be suitable. You might go with what was it called? Promotional pricing. Yes. Brand image. If a business has a really good brand image, like Apple does, like Tesla does, then you might set prices that are high because you have loyal customers if you have good brand image. So whatever the price is, people might end up buying. Cost is another factor that you look at. There is no point in selling a product for less than the cost that went into producing it. Obviously, we talked about it before. So it could be one of those factors. Lastly, it might be related to the marketing objective. You have to go back to section 2 for this. We talked about what objectives businesses have, one of which was profit maximization. If you're after a lot of profit in a short notice, then price skimming might be good. You set really high prices. If your objective is to gain a big market share, maybe low prices. So penetration pricing in that case would be suitable. If you want to gain good brand image, which is another objective, marketing objective, then setting high prices, price skimming that is, might be a suitable strategy. So as a conclusion, this picture of the sauces and the sneakers, these are examples of products that operate in a very high competitive market. So, which means people would not consider the brand name or the quality necessarily when they purchase them. So your prices should be very similar to other products available. For example, you're buying ketchup. It shouldn't be $20 a piece, right? So there has to be resemblance to other competitors. There might be slight changes, but not significant changes, because it would determine, and our next topic would explain that in a better way. This picture here is an example of businesses that have good brand image. So these businesses usually set really high prices for the products. Okay, so as a conclusion, you don't consider one factor in deciding what pricing method you choose. That's point number one, meaning your product is new. Okay, well, is it unique? Okay, it might be yes or no. And then you go to competition level in the market. That might be a consideration as well, regardless of whether the product is unique or not. The economy might be a factor that you consider. Okay, this is a unique product. The quality is really great, but can people afford it? So you take these factors as one package into consideration in order to make a decision about your pricing method. So it's not only one factor, and cost might come as a factor always in determining your pricing method. Okay, and this is really good for writing essays as well. You might be asked, well, can you argue for a good strategy for pricing a product for this business? You might have to list all these factors and argue for them the same way I did just now. And then at the end, maybe your arguments would be, you pick one pricing method and you justify it. And you might say, well, since they have a good brand image and the product is unique at the same time and competition level is low, then maybe price skimming, for example, would be a good decision. So that's point number one. Point number two is that no business relies on one pricing method for a long time. They might change it based on the changes in the circumstances. For example, price skimming is used, but later on it's changed to competitive pricing for the same product because the circumstances have changed. We talked about that roughly as well. You might have low prices for now. It's a competitive pricing method. But later on, once you create a good brand image and you establish your name in the market relative to your competitors, then you might switch to price skimming. So the point is, again, as an elaboration, no business relies for a very long time on one particular pricing method, and it could be changed. So that's one thing you might have to pay attention to when you write essays. Okay? So far, it's just been things that we've talked about before when it comes to pricing method. If you don't have any questions, I'm going to go to our next topic, which is the last topic for today, which is price elasticity of demand. Okay, so what is price elasticity of demand? Well, let me ask you this question. If you're going to the cinema and you are an ardent fan of the movies, let's say, you love going to the movies. Let's say price of the tickets, movie tickets, go up by 20%, which is a lot. So in the past, you paid like $10 for a ticket. Now it's 20. So there's a 100%, let's say, increase in price. Since going to the movies is not a need, it's a want, it's a luxury to have, a lot of people might reconsider their going to the movies habit, let's say. Since it's more expensive and it's not a need, that change in price, that increase in price might impact their purchasing habit. Okay? Compare that to other products like this, bottled water. Water is obviously a need, and its price currently in the globe is low. It might be $1 maximum a bottle. Well, increase its selling price by 100%, so let's say it's $2 now. How many people would reconsider their decision of buying bottled water? Not a lot. There might be few people, but a lot of people would not reconsider their decision. And the reason is the two factors that I just told you. It's currently cheap and it's a need. I can give you more examples to products like this, like the bottled water. For example, rice and vegetables and fruits. These things are cheap and they're in need. Other examples like the cinema tickets would be traveling, would be cars, and other things like that, you know, buying a house. So for the first example, the cinema ticket, there is a responsiveness. There is a greater responsiveness of quantity demanded when there's a change in price. For the second example, the bottled water, the responsiveness of demand is less than the change in price. So that's the formal, more fancy way of saying what I just told you. Meaning, again, let me tell it again. If I change price by a percentage, so let's say it's 50%, the change in demand would be less than that percentage. Let's say it's 10%. The cinema tickets, the price of the tickets changed by 50%, for example, but the demand for it changed by 60%. So 60% of people decided that they're not going to go to the movies since the tickets are more expensive. Okay, so far so good. If you did not understand that part, let me know. What do I call this? This phenomenon of change in demand as a result of change in price, I call it price elasticity of demand. For the products like the bottled water, I call it price inelastic. Inelastic, okay? For the products like the cinema tickets, I call them price elastic, okay? So the PED would be higher for the price, the tickets, and the PED for the bottled water would be lower, less than 1, okay? Because it's less responsive. You can use that formula, even though it's not given in your textbook. It would be AS level. but that's the formula we are using. What is the percentage change in quantity demanded compared to the percentage change in price? If price goes up by a lot, but demand doesn't change, that means that the number would be lower mathematically. If the price changes by an amount, but demand changes a lot, since the numerator is higher, then PED would be higher. Okay, so again, higher PED than 1, price elastic, cinema tickets. Price elasticity of demand, PED of less than 1, would mean that the product is inelastic, like the bottled water. So if I go to this graph right here, the line for elastic products would be less steep, while the line for inelastic product would be steep. This means that, notice this x-axis is quantity demanded. Notice how the change is this much, which is not a lot, for a price change of this much, which is a lot. For the elastic, there's a quantity demanded change by this amount, while for the price change, it's this amount. So you notice that the quantity demanded is higher than the change in price. Okay, so that's what price elasticity is. How is it useful? Well, Uber is a really good example. Uber knows their price elasticity, and they're using it for their purpose in order to make profit. How? So obviously, there are peak times for ordering Uber by people. Let's say it's around during the rush hour, in the early morning when people go to work, and in the evening when people come back from work. So we call those peak times. That's when people use Uber the most. Okay, so that means that demand for their product goes up for a certain period of time. Okay, so what Uber did was to increase their selling price, let's call it, or their charging, how much they're charging. They increase it during their peak time, and they decrease it during the other times. So that's responding to demand. Why? Because during rush hour, their product is priced inelastic. Okay, it's inelastic, which means even if it's expensive, people still need to use Uber. So it becomes a need for them, for people. While going for a beer with friends is not a need at 10 or 12 p.m. Like if it's expensive, some people might reconsider going out. So Uber decreases their price, which means during those times, not rush hour, not peak time, just going out for a beer, price is elastic. It's elastic, which means if I increase price, less people is going to use my service. So it's not a good idea. So this is just an example of how businesses use price elasticity of demand in order to maximize their price, in order to maximize their profit. Okay, well, some people argue that it's not very ethical for Uber to do this. Like they've criticized Uber, saying that they're taking advantage of people's need. But the customers, it's just responding to people's demand in a free market. So there is no sound scientific business-wise argument against it. But ethically, some people say it's just taking advantage of people's needs during certain period of time. And the Uber example is very interesting because you might say some businesses products have price elastic products forever. But that's not the case. I mean, bottled water could become elastic for a certain period of time. Like during huge recession, like we're experiencing currently in our economy, like there is a very severe slowdown in the economy, bottled water could become price elastic, which means if businesses increase their price, a lot of people will not be able to buy them. Okay, so it depends on external factors as well, and it could change even during certain time periods in the same day, like the Uber example. So I hope this was clear to you. Just pay attention to one thing, which is PED is not a pricing method. It's just one factor that would determine what pricing method to pick. Okay. An example to that would be how Uber has used price elasticity of demand in order to use, so ultimately we're calling this promotional pricing, right? And if I know that my product is inelastic, I might go with price skimming, not penetration pricing, because whatever the price is, people will still buy them. So it's a factor in making a decision about which pricing method to pick. It's not a pricing method in itself. Same way, the economy is just a factor you consider in knowing what pricing method to pick, and it's not a factor in itself. Sorry, it's not a method itself, so it's the same thing. Okay, so that was it for today. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, we are done. Just don't leave the meeting just now. Let me take let me take registration quickly.